Welcome back to the CHF Overtime Podcast. My name is Jordan DiLuciano. As you can see, I got a little bit different setup from home and from the tournament back in March. I got my green screen. Thank you, John Rochester, for hooking me up with the green screen and the graphic art behind me. Very, very nice. Got all the divisions, the conferences, should I say. I'm kind of blocking my own logo, but it's whatever. But let's get on with it. It's our first of our many interviews throughout this whole season. We got to start it early in September. The season's right around the corner. Before you know it, I'll be calling games for Farmingdale like I do on the island. But we'll get to that. When we get to that, we're going to start the season off introducing first guest. We'll be back later today, 3 o'clock, with the Upstate Commissioner, John Marchese. But kicking it off, the College Hockey South Commissioner, Knell. Kyle, thank you for hopping on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So, Kyle, you're kind of it's a new face right here in the CHF, right? When did you get involved in the CHF, or were you involved behind the scenes, or did you just start up right after the season ended?
Yeah, so I actually played at UT for 4 years, or University of Tennessee for 4 years, and I had been close with Sarge. And this past season, I just said, "Hey, if you need anything, need any help with anything, let me know." And so I came onto the scene probably late September, early October timeframe last year, and I was really just helping with graphics, social media, keeping up with the standings, the website. So was involved. I wouldn't say I was technically on the board or anything, but just kind of being a part of the process and helped with the rebranding, moving from the SEC HC to College Hockey South, and so from there, just kind of stayed close with it, and then things transpired, and now I'm in this role. So.
Yeah. As you said, the expansion of the Collegiate Hockey South. We'll get into more of the new division alignment in a little bit. You said you played 4 years at University of Tampa. I was leading into my next question. You kind of answered it. What got you into the hockey, and what led you into now a administration role now in your current life?
Yeah, well, so at University of Tennessee, I know there's two UTs, UT Tampa, University of Tennessee. In my eyes, there's only one UT, but hey, I know. Yeah, Tampa being in the conference now too. But no, so I grew up playing. I actually grew up playing in Augusta, Georgia, which people always ask. At least I live in Tennessee right now, still in the greater Knoxville area, and I get the question all the time. Where hockey? Like, what's hockey in the South, right? You must not be from around here. Where'd you grow up? And I always say, well, hey, I actually grew up further south than here in Augusta, Georgia. And that really started from the ECHL or former ECHL hockey team, the Augusta Lynx. My parents were part owners of the team, and was really close to hockey growing up. And I said one year I wanted to have my birthday party at the ice skating rink. And I loved it. And next thing you know, I'm in lessons, and then we ended up moving to Nashville because I ended up making a team out of Nashville, and we were driving every weekend 5.5, 6 hours just to practice and play. And my parents were like, well, hey, let's up and move. So played out in Nashville, and then I ended up going to UT. You
said 5-6 hours to go to practice?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not every single day, right? We were doing it, but every weekend. It was one of these, just get up really early and take off for the weekend, and then be back. So there's a commitment for sure.
I thought when I played college hockey, driving 30 minutes to our rink was annoying. So I can only imagine doing that far of a drive. I should have been grateful for that 30-minute drive. So now let's get into the College Hockey South here. Posted on Instagram 6 days ago was the new the division alignment. We have the East, West, and South division, and the D3 division. So we'll just focus on the East, West, and South before we get into the D3. How does that affect playoffs? How does that affect head-to-head play? Are his teams going to stick within their own division for the most part, or will there be some outside division play?
Yeah, so just collecting the schedules for everybody. We're not saying they have to just play your select teams in your division. We're welcome to teams going out of conference, out of division, right, to play opponents. So our structure right now, as far as for how our divisions are laid out, we wanted to kind of keep it geographic, just again keeping the budget cost perspective for these teams, so they're not having to be required to play. Hey, you're gonna South Carolina, you're gonna go play Florida 3 times. You're gonna go play Miami twice. That's a lot of burden on a team to constantly travel, at least that far. So we kind of split the divisions up by geography. So we have our West Division, which of course we kind of split Tennessee in half. Then you've got Alabama and Mississippi, state of Alabama, state of Mississippi. In the West, and then East, you've got Tennessee, along with the South Carolina teams and the Georgia teams. So those conferences are pretty, obviously they're 6 and 6. And then of course you've got South, or if you want to just call it the Florida Division, you can call it the Florida Division as well, because every team in that division is in the state of Florida. So how our requirements are, what we each team is required to do, at least just from our playoff standpoint. You can play a team as many times as you want in your division, but we're only counting 2 of those games as our true standings. And so what we're doing from an auto bid standpoint for our playoffs is the top seed in the West, the top seed in the East, and then the top 2 seeds in the South, just because they have the 2 additional teams. Okay. All essentially get an automatic bid to our playoffs.
Gotcha.
We do use My Hockey Rankings to kind of say, okay, hey, if we'll say if Ole Miss is number 1 in the West, and then Georgia's in the East, and we'll just say Tampa in the South, and we'll say Florida Atlantic being that second team from the South, we will then stack rank those based on My Hockey Ranking to determine who is the number 1 seed in our playoffs, who's the number 2, who's the number 3, and 4. So because of the expansion that you previously alluded to, we've grown significantly. So what we normally had was a 10-team playoff. You're 1 through 8, 1 play 8, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. We've now expanded that to 10 teams, just because we feel the teams are getting more competitive. They're wanting to fight their way in, and of course, trying to punch their ticket to nationals as well. And we expanded to 10. So if you're on the Thursday night, the 7 versus 10 seed will play each other. The 8 and 9 will play each other. And the winners of those will advance and be the 7 and 8 seed for our playoffs. So just to try to, give the teams right on the bubble, right on the fringe, the chance to actually compete for our playoffs.
Okay, interesting stuff. So then you got the West, East, and South. D3, does D3 now have the same impact as it did last year? How they can compete in these playoffs, and they can have a chance to go to the national tournament, just like the Division 3 Tampa team did? Or is it any change of pace?
Yeah, so we changed it up a little bit. So our East, West, and South conference I guess we would say, is our D2 conference, are all tournament bound. So essentially they are competing for the Fed Cup. However, our D3 teams won't be tournament bound. They're not competing for the CHF Fed Cup. They will have, a playoff of their own. So we'll have a D2 College Hockey South champion and a D3 College Hockey South champion.
And then after that, the D3 team, like you said, does not go, unlike last year, the D3 team did not go to the CHF tournament. Okay. And does these D3 teams, will they venture into any D2 games, or they just stay in?
So we do have some crossover. Of course, you can see from, or at least the image that you're speaking with, that we posted on our social media. You'll notice that Florida State is in the D3 division as well. You'll notice, of course, Florida Tech, Florida Southern. The other 4 teams, being Embry-Riddle, Florida, USF, and Tampa, of course, are those second teams. We also have the potential in the next we may be pulling off 2 or 3 teams this year from the East and West that will also be considered in that D3 group. But my guess is here in the next year or two, we'll have at least 5 more teams being added to that group.
Okay.
My thought is, and our goal here is just to continue to grow the sport of hockey, period. And that's a little bit tougher, of course, in the South. You think of hockey, you're thinking North, you're thinking, Minnesota, you're thinking Michigan, you're thinking Canada, of course, but you're not really, the stigma isn't, hey, I'm going to go down South and play hockey. It's not as prevalent. And so we want to continue to grow the sport. And there are programs like Tampa that have a ton of guys come out and try out. And so at the end of the day, we want to be able to give these guys still something to play for, and be able to see ice time. And so that's really kind of the thought process around the D3 is that if you've got a program or school that has an abundance of kids, we want them to still be able to compete and play. And like I said, now we've got the potential of Ole Miss, Alabama. Obviously, Alabama already has a D1 team as well, but Ole Miss, Alabama, Kennesaw State, Tennessee, Georgia, South Carolina, and Clemson all talking about the potential of a second team in the next few years, just because their programs are growing. They have the interest, and we want to be able to help continue to grow the sport.
I have a lot of family down in Florida, so when they ask me what I do and I tell them about these teams down in Florida, they're like, wait, Embry-Riddle has a hockey team? Florida Atlantic has a hockey team? I'm like, yeah, they do, and they're pretty good too. Like, I've seen these guys play. It's crazy. And the Tampa team, a lot of kids I'm from Long Island. Right now I'm sitting in my house in Long Island. A lot of kids from Long Island go down to Tampa and play for that team. Kid I interviewed last year, I don't know if he graduated. He was the captain, defenseman Christian Kukas. I don't know if he's still there, but he's from Long Island. I know a kid who played for the Junior Islanders. The name is blanking me. He went down this year to go play for Tampa. So they're getting guys all over the place.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy, hearing and seeing recruiting being a thing for club hockey. I mean, I know John Camp for Georgia's been traveling all over. And they've brought in a ton of new kids from all over. So it's crazy. And again, at the end of the day, just it's awesome to see the sport continue to grow.
So you mentioned John Camp, the head coach of Georgia. So that'll bring me back to it reminds me of the Fed Cup tournament where we saw a lot of these top teams get eliminated in pool play or fairly early. And one of them was that Georgia team. Alabama wound up coming out of nowhere. They were the 3 seed in their own pool. They wound up going pretty late into the tournament. Then teams like Florida Atlantic did not have the showing that many, I would assume they have hoped for. Same thing with teams like USF. And the big one was Tampa. Do you see these teams, these big name teams, kind of righting the ship this year? Have you seen anything in the offseason in terms of, like you said, recruiting and getting the ball rolling to get back to the top and stay at the top?
Oh, for sure. And I think of course, from our playoff perspective, expanding and bringing in, I know some of them being D3 teams, we expanded 10 teams from last year to this year total. So I know Georgia's chomping at the bits to be able to repeat. But of course, to your point, you're adding in Tampa, UCF, USF, and Embry-Riddle, all competing for those our championship. So it's certainly going to be interesting. I'm hoping that this year, or at least in the future, that Georgia Tech knocked off FAU. So kind of hurts seeing two teams from the same conference play each other in nationals, at least in pool play. Again, same thing, Alabama and Georgia. So no, I think they're all excited. They got the taste of being in the Fed Cup, and I know they're wanting to return. So
it just goes to show that Fed Cup, how unpredictable it is. Because I wasn't the only one that saw these top ranked South teams and all across actually the CHF, these top ranked teams that think, oh, this team's a favorite, this team's a favorite, and whatnot. And then boom, end of pool play. We see, I think I might be wrong, but I think I'm in the ballpark. Like 6 of the 7 top seeds were gone because it's so unpredictable. And that leads to my next one. You see this competitive play just from the South Division along, FAU, UCF, USF, Alabama, Embry-Riddle. Do you think the CHS, how competitive it is, do you think that helps them and gets them ready for the tournament and gets them ready for conference playoffs? Or do you think that might be a drag and just beat them down all year? And by the time they get to playoffs, by the time they get to the Nationals, they're hurting.
It's a long season. I think it certainly prepares them because again, if you're looking at your top 32 teams, and I could be wrong here, but just from the where teams finished ranking, I believe if you're adding in the former SCHC teams that are now in the College Hockey South, you're talking 14 of the 32 were from the South. So I think just from a strength of schedule standpoint, it's going to be very beneficial for these teams. And again, just prepping them for what that competition level is going to be come getting to nationals.
Gotcha. And I guess we'll leave it off with this. We mentioned the big dogs. Right? We mentioned Georgia, FAU, Tampa, Alabama, you name it. Any team you see from last year that may not have had the season they were looking for, maybe like a slow start, that turns the page this year and becomes a threat within the collegiate hockey South?
Yeah, I hate to say, I've been thinking about this. I'd say two teams. And one, you're probably gonna be like, you're kind of crazy for even saying this, even because they came in fourth. South Carolina, because of how our playoffs were kind of structured from picking and choosing last year was a little weird. We didn't have the structure of saying, hey, these games count for both teams, and so they kind of came and hurt South Carolina. They were, I believe, the number 10 or 11 seed, but from our conference standpoint for ranking. But again, they had an amazing showing at nationals and came in fourth. They were an overtime away from playing for the championship game. So it was pretty impressive to see. I know that they're ready to turn the page on last season and continue to build on it. So my guess is you're going to see them back in nationals again. And so I'm really excited to see what they can do this year, and of course be at our playoffs. But I'd say one team that just from and I'm gonna not picking favorites here, but because I played it at University of Tennessee, I'd probably say that I'd like to see. I'm interested to see what they're going to do this year, only because they beat South Carolina both times. They won some really big games last year, but then they also let a few slip by, and so I'm interested to see what they can do, especially in being in a division with Georgia Tech, Georgia, South Carolina, and Clemson. So I'm certainly interested to see what they can do this year.
You mentioned that South Carolina team. I called that overtime semifinal loss to, I believe it was Babson. They lost to. It was 2-1 game, back and forth. That South Carolina team just did not go away that tournament. They were one of the unlikely teams that rose to promise, and like you said, one goal away. So I'm not surprised by that pick. The Tennessee team, unfortunately, you know more than I do about the Tennessee team. I hope I get the chance to see a lot more throughout this season, because I joined onto the CHF late in January, so I had a lot of catching up to do. So before we sign off here, be sure we are live on Twitter right now on the Collegiate Hockey Federation Twitter account. We're now on YouTube as well at the Collegiate Hockey Federation YouTube page. Always follow us on Instagram as well at CHF Hockey _. Unfortunately, you can't live stream these videos on Instagram, but I will always provide the link to YouTube and Twitter to find these live shows if you just have an Instagram. And again, 3:00 today, the upstate New York Collegiate the upstate New York Collegiate Hockey League Commissioner. That's a mouthful, that one.
Oh, yeah.
John Marchese will be joining me later at 3:00. Again, Kyle Knell, the Commissioner of the Collegiate Hockey South. Thank you for joining on the first episode of CHF Overtime Podcast for this year. Hope to see you throughout the year and talk later.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Have a good one, guys, and we'll see you all at 3:00.